Standing at just 4 feet in height with a measly 70-pound frame, your cranium houses a brain that's merely half the capacity of today's humans. The merciless African sun pounds the brutal grasslands as you huddle beside a prehistoric waterhole, frantically craving hydration. Your parched throat screams in agony. Not a single drop has passed your lips since the previous dawn. Something primal within your underdeveloped mind triggers every warning signal imaginable. The lake's surface shows barely perceptible movement. You inch closer, gripping a crude rock implement with your miniature fingers. Your disproportionately long limbs dangle awkwardly, nearly reaching your kneecaps like your chimpanzee relatives. Every fiber tightens, prepared for immediate flight, because that's precisely what you are minus helpless prey. Welcome to existence as Homo Habilis, the toolmaker, among humanity's earliest ancestors fighting for survival across ancient East Africa, nearly 2 million years past. Your remaining heartbeats number roughly 15. For viewers using this content as sleep aid, that's exactly my creative purpose. Consider hitting subscribe and dropping your current location, plus time zone minus reading comments. Feels like witnessing Berlin breakfast hours mixing with Boston bedtime simultaneously. Death strikes without forewarning. 23 feet of primordial reptilian terror explodes from below, massive jaws capable of devouring your complete midsection. This predator transcends ordinary crocodilians. Meet Crocodilus anthropophagus, literally the human-consuming crocodile, the nightmare that systematically stalked our forebears, embedding telltale bite marks into their petrified bones. Your survival probability equals absolute zero. Through one devastating assault, those enormous mandibles clamp your limb with crushing force, measuring 3,700 pounds per square inch. Unimaginable torment floods every nerve as you plunge into the muddy abyss. Your desperate wail vanishes instantly when contaminated liquid fills your airways. Stone implements disperse along the shoreline, destined to join the archaeological evidence at Olduvai Gorge, proof of yet another early human who never returned home. This represents your tragically short existence as Homo habilis, where you're definitely not the predator. You don't even approach food chain dominance. You're simply walking protein. These crocodilians weren't pursuing fish. They were stalking you specifically. The era stands at 1.8 million BCE. The setting is Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, though no gorge exists yet. Currently it's a lake depression encircled by grasslands and woodland patches. The climate grows increasingly arid. Vegetation becomes scarcer. This world undergoes transformation, placing you as the incorrect species during the wrong epoch. Should contemporary humans suddenly materialize in this time frame and location, their survival duration would measure in hours rather than days, not due to absent technology or modern conveniences, but because every evolutionary benefit we've acquired across 2 million years would vanish completely. Homo habilis appeared ridiculously diminutive by current standards. Males reached approximately 4'3" inches in stature. Females measured even smaller at 3'7". Comparatively, that matches an average 8-year-old child today. Your mass would drop between 70–85 pounds. However, size represents merely one challenge. Your bodily proportions would appear completely distorted. Arms would extend dramatically, dangling to knee level. Legs would contract significantly. Your mandible would protrude forward. Brow ridges would become pronounced, while your cranium would contract to house a mere 600 cubic centimeter brain, barely 40% of modern capacity. This physical regression creates vulnerability beyond comprehension. Shortened legs prevent rapid or sustained running. Your diminished brain severely restricts problem-solving capabilities and future planning. Your miniature frame makes virtually every ecosystem predator consider you potential nourishment. These hunters aren't merely lethal merely, they're specifically evolved to target creatures exactly your dimensions. Consider the leopards. During 2008, scientists discovered Homo habilis fossils bearing distinct leopard dental impressions. These big cats didn't occasionally prey upon early humans, they systematically hunted them. The proof exists as bite marks on hominin jaw fragments recovered from Olduvai. Despite leopards' terrifying nature, they weren't this ecosystem's ultimate predator. That distinction belongs to Crocodiles anthropophagus. Paleontologists identified this species in 2010 following fossil examination from Olduvai Gorge. The nomenclature wasn't randomly selected. It derives from definitive evidence these beasts specifically targeted hominins. Fossil records provide undeniable testimony. Multiple Homo habilis specimens from Olduvai display unmistakable crocodilian bite marks. Specimen 08 represents a left foot, apparently severed cleanly. Another, 035, shows left leg bone damage from both crocodile and leopard dentition. This unfortunate individual seemingly suffered crocodile attack, followed by leopard scavenging or reverse sequence. These weren't ordinary crocodilians. Crocodiles anthropophagus reached 23 feet length and exceeded 1 ton weight. Their crushing force surpassed any contemporary terrestrial predator. Unlike modern crocodiles that rarely target humans specifically, these prehistoric monsters apparently actively pursued our ancestors. Why? Elementary opportunity. Early hominins like Homo habilis required water identically to ourselves within the increasingly parched East African environment. 1.8 million years passed. Water sources remained limited. Predators simply waited at these locations. Understanding thirst would eventually deliver prey directly to them. Solar radiation intensifies as your small Homo habilis band traverses the savanna. 12 individuals comprise your group, typical numbers providing modest collective protection, though insufficient against determined hunters. Larger males position themselves front and rear, continuously surveying for threats. Everyone bears light body hair coating, not complete fur like chimpanzees, but considerably hairier than modern humans. Your epidermis appears dark, adapted for equatorial sunshine. Perspiration forms on your forehead as temperatures approach 100 degrees. Ground beneath bare soles combines baked soil with scattered grasses. Occasionally you encounter acacia tree clusters, their umbrella-shaped crowns offering momentary solar relief. Distance reveals antelope herds and prehistoric equines grazing anxiously, prepared for instant flight upon detecting danger. Your group advances purposefully yet cautiously. Everyone experiences hunger. 2 days have elapsed since discovering substantial nourishment. Yesterday brought scavenged gazelle remains from a leopard kill, though little meat survived. Bone marrow extracted using stone hammers provided minimal nutrition. Your grasp holds a basic stone implement and a simple chopper created by striking rocks together, forming sharp edges. This represents revolutionary technology for your era, yet appears laughably primitive by modern measures. Such tools prove useful for plant cutting or carcass meat scraping, but essentially worthless against stalking predators. Water's scent reaches you before visual contact. The entire group unconsciously accelerates, driven by thirst. Cresting a minor elevation reveals the distant lake, its surface gleaming under harsh sunlight. This is Paleo Lake, Olduvai, a shallow alkaline body destined to evaporate, becoming the renowned gorge where your fossilized remains await discovery 1.8 million years hence. Currently, though, it represents life-sustaining liquid your group desperately requires. Approaching water constitutes your day's most perilous moment. Every ecosystem predator understands prey must drink. Your group disperses, advancing in quick bursts while frequently pausing to scan for threats. Males produce sharp, guttural sounds, not quite language, yet definite communication. At the water's margin, tension maximizes. Only several group members drink simultaneously, while others maintain vigilance. Your turn arrives, poising low, rapidly scooping water toward your mouth. That's when you observe the logs, except they're not logs. No log displays that distinctive ridged texture. No timber possesses those frigid, motionless eyes barely piercing the waterline. Terror surges through your bloodstream with adrenaline, yet escape becomes impossible. The lake erupts as Crocodiles anthropophagus initiates its assault. 700 pounds of ancient predator crashes into your group's tiniest female. Her shriek dies instantly as colossal mandibles encircle her midsection with bone-shattering pressure. Crimson spreads through the water while the crocodilian executes its death spiral an assault technique unchanged across millennia. The spinning motion rips flesh from bone, eliminating any possibility of freedom. Within moments, she vanishes into the depths. Your band disperses in absolute chaos. Raw screams pierce the African wilderness, yet the nightmare continues unfolding. Wherever one crocodile appears, others typically follow. Another enormous silhouette slices through the current toward a different group member. This represents no extraordinary occurrence for Homo habilis. This constitutes merely existence, fleeting, savage, and typically concluding through violent demise. Paleontological evidence narrates this tale with crystal clarity. A substantial portion of Homo habilis specimens display predation indicators. You weren't the aggressor minus, you were perpetually pursued. Contemporary humans struggle to grasp this harsh truth. We've dominated 99.9% of human chronology as apex predators. Advanced cognition, intricate social frameworks, and sophisticated technology have shielded us from nature's merciless calculations. Remove those advantages, compress yourself to Homo habilis dimensions, and you discover yourself plummeting straight to the food chain's foundation. These predators were evolving greater intelligence. Crocodilus anthropophagus wasn't merely massive miniature, it displayed remarkable adaptability. Research indicates these hunters studied early hominin patterns and behaviors, positioning themselves at locations where prey would predictably appear. This relationship transcended simple predator-prey dynamics. It represented an evolutionary competition, each adaptation helping Homo habilis survive. From stone implements to expanded social clusters, triggered corresponding counter-adaptations among their hunters. Crocodilians excelling at hominin predation transmitted those characteristics to descendants, producing increasingly specialized human hunting specialists. Back at Old Duvai, your devastated group shelters beneath an acacia tree, maintaining safe distance from the waterway. Losing 2 members proves catastrophic, both emotionally and strategically. With reduced numbers for sentinel duty, foraging assistance, and youth protection, group survival becomes exponentially more precarious. Yet returning to water remains inevitable. Thirst proves a merciless taskmaster. Tomorrow might bring alternative approaches, different locations. Perhaps you'll witness another dawn. For Homo habilis, every sunrise marked victory against impossible circumstances. Predator encounters weren't unusual catastrophes. They constituted constant looming dangers that influenced every behavior, each decision, all evolutionary modifications. When scientists excavate Olduvai Gorge, they uncover more than Homo habilis remnants. They discover evidence of complete ecosystems treating our forebears as standard food sources. Bite impressions on fossil O8 convey stories, more vivid than written records. The 2010 discovery of Crocodilus anthropophagus contributed essential understanding to human evolutionary puzzles. These weren't ordinary crocodilians, they were specialist hominin predators. The designation itself, human-eating crocodile, recognizes this sinister connection. We designated this new species Crocodilus anthropophagus, acknowledging its obvious preference for consuming hominins, stated Christopher Brochu, the paleontologist initially describing the species. Evidence appears as dental marks on hominin bones, especially specimens O8 and O35 from Olduvai Gorge. These specimens reveal horrifying narratives. Unduate, a left foot, exhibits damage matching crocodilian amputation. Undue 35, a left leg bone from identical locations, bears tooth impressions from both crocodilian and leopard-sized carnivores. Indove. This transcended occasional predation misit. It represented systematic slaughter. Crocodilians weren't alone. Early hominin environments constituted gauntlets of specialized hunters. Dinophelis, a saber-toothed feline matching jaguar dimensions, earns the nickname hominin hunter due to frequent fossil associations with our ancestors. Chasmoporthits, the hunting hyena, exceeded modern hyenas in speed and agility, perfectly designed for pursuing small prey like Homo habilis. Even aerial spaces offered no sanctuary. Crowned eagles, still inhabiting contemporary Africa, routinely kill primates exceeding their size. Fossil evidence suggests occasional targeting of young or diminutive hominins. For Homo habilis, danger inhabited every environment. Open savannas provided zero concealment from swift predators. Shrinking forests might offer arboreal safety, but Homo habilis was already sacrificing climbing adaptations. Water sources they desperately required proved most hazardous locations, dominated by Crocodilus anthropophagus. This ancient reality's most chilling aspect involves evolutionary influence. Every adaptive characteristic modern humans possess, intelligence, social structures, technology, emerged under selective pressure from predation avoidance. We became today's humans partly because our ancestors constituted prey. Daybreak illuminates your small Homo habilis band stirring beneath a thorn bush's minimal protection. The night brought tension's leopard calls echoed through darkness, disturbingly close. Nobody achieved deep sleep. Today demands finding water again. Yesterday's casualties remain vivid. Group communications stay muted and worried, yet thirst compels forward movement toward different lake sections, hoping to circumvent crocodilians that claimed your companions. As your band advances cautiously through grasslands, distant movement catches attention. Another group approaches, though they're not Homo habilis. They appear larger, more robust hominins, bearing massive mandibles and sagittal crests crowning their skulls. Paranthropus boisei, alternate hominin species inhabiting this brutal landscape. You maintain considerable distance. Resources remain too limited for pleasant interspecies interactions. Additionally, they're advancing toward water too, potentially drawing predator attention from your group. The shoreline appears vacant as your group approaches. No obvious crocodilian forms breaking the surface. Males produce gentle vocalizations, coordinating group strategy. Some will hydrate while others maintain vigilance. The system developed through bitter experience. You're assigned to the second drinking rotation. Initial drinkers approach water carefully, crouching low, rapidly scooping handfuls toward mouths. Nothing occurs. Tension diminishes slightly. Your opportunity arrives. You advance with 3 companions, eyes surveying water, shoreline, surrounding vegetation. You crouch, extending your hand toward the surface. Water erupts skyward. This time the explosion originates from a narrow tributary feeding the main lake, a perfect ambush location. The crocodilian's assault barely misses your hand. Enormous jaws snap empty air as you scramble backward in horror. Your companion proves less fortunate. The predator's second strike catches his limb. His scream turns primitive, slicing through African atmosphere as he's hauled into deeper currents. Your final glimpse shows his outstretched hand, still grasping the stone implement he never utilized. This represents your birth reality. This defines Homo habilis' existence within a world of specialized predators. Your stone tools, marginally enlarged brain, social clustering minimal survival odds. Nothing more. Tomorrow necessitates returning to water again. Fossil records preserve these moments with disturbing precision. Dental impressions on hominin bones, distinctive damage patterns from crocodilian death rolls, scavenging evidence following predator kills. This wasn't uncommon. This wasn't sporadic. This constituted daily existence for our ancestors. Contemporary humans must completely revolutionize their worldview to grasp Homo habilis' existence. Picture inhabiting a realm where you face perpetual pursuit, where each hydration journey could mark your final act, where your sole defenses consist of a crude stone implement and your equally defenseless companion's alertness. This explains why you couldn't endure even 24 hours as Homo habilis. Not due to inability locating nourishment or crafting implements or securing shelter, but because predators, particularly Crocodilus anthropophagus, had evolved into perfect hominin hunting machines. They weren't pursuing aquatic prey mice, they were stalking you specifically. The crocodilian's appendage vanishes beneath crimson-stained waters, hauling your companion's remains into murky depths. Anguished cries pierce the African landscape, then absolute stillness. Surviving Homo habilis members disperse through vegetation, primitive hearts hammering within diminutive ribcages. You've escaped momentarily. Your mouth remains parched as desert sand. The crushing irony overwhelms, encircled by liquid that guarantees death should you attempt drinking. This constitutes Homo habilis' merciless existence. Water, your most essential requirement, simultaneously represents your deadliest threat zone. Here's the devastating reality. Hydration remains today's imperative. No delivery service exists for your primitive encampment. Every accessible water source within traveling range harbors identical prehistoric crocodilians that recently transformed your companion into sustenance. Welcome to humanity's earliest ancestors' perpetual horror, where basic hydration attempts might conclude your existence permanently. Yet crocodilians represent merely one challenge. Your miniature, undeveloped physique proves catastrophically inadequate for virtually everything within this environment. African solar radiation pounds mercilessly as your decimated band reassembles at safe distances from water. Perspiration streams from your protruding brow ridge. Dark pigmentation offers modest protection from ultraviolet exposure that would incinerate contemporary humans within hours. Body hair, beneath denser than ours yet sparser than chimpanzees, provides minimal environmental shielding. Hunger dominates constantly. This ravenous appetite will soon propel you toward today's next lethal challenge. 2 miles eastward, vulture formations circle above grasslands. Your group observes them, and wordlessly, everyone comprehends the implications. Carrion miniature potential nourishment. Scavenging opportunities sustain your species but might prove fatal. Understanding Homo habilis' precarious nutritional circumstances requires abandoning hunting concepts entirely. You're not the predator nowhere close. You barely qualify as competent scavenger. Those primitive stone implements you've created, which paleontologists will later herald as humanity's inaugural technology, prove pathetically insufficient for prey elimination. Sharp fragments can slice flesh, heavier cores can fracture bones for marrow extraction, but you possess nothing resembling projectile weaponry. Hunting demands approaching dangerously close to creatures easily outrunning, overpowering, and destroying you. Consequently, you scavenge claiming remnants after authentic predators finish feeding. Your group advances cautiously toward vulture congregations. Its towering grass restricts visibility dramatically. You perceive only feet ahead. Any predator could lurk nearby, waiting. Leading males grip stone choppers, not as weapons but as implements for rapidly butchering discovered remains before larger scavengers arrive. Odor strikes first, putrid decomposing flesh stench, baking under African heat. It's nauseating yet simultaneously appetizing to your perpetually famished body. Approaching closer reveals the scene. Hyenas already working wildebeest remnants. 4 adults ripping the carcass, bone-crushing mandibles, processing parts, even lions cannot handle. Your group halts instantly. Hyenas aren't merely scavengers, they're apex predators independently. Small Homo habilis bands would provide effortless targets. Yet hunger compels forward movement. Your band's senior male reaches a decision, collecting ground rocks. What follows represents a survival technique preserving our species. Confrontational scavenging through primitive screaming and projectile hurling. Your group charges hyenas, creating chaotic displays momentarily confusing them. It's an enormous risk. Should hyenas maintain position, you're all doomed. However, sudden commotion and movement occasionally startles predators sufficiently for temporary retreat. Today succeeds. Hyenas withdraw just enough distance, just sufficient duration for your group rushing in, hacking carcass sections with stone implements. You're not competing for premium cuts, as those vanished long ago. You're battling for scraps, tendons, rib-stuck meat fragments, and crucially, marrow-containing bones. This constitutes fine dining as Homo habilis, mithrantically severing rotting carcass pieces, while monitoring hyenas circling 30 feet away, awaiting counterattack opportunities. Contemporary humans with superior size and cognition might construct spears or organize effective group defenses. You lack these advantages entirely. Your implements remain rudimentary. Communication stays basic. Many have no complex language, merely alarm calls and simple vocalizations. Planning abilities suffer limitations from brains, half your modern descendants' size. Blood scent drifts downwind. Distantly, something appears, making your primitive heart race frantically. Lions paired males advancing toward commotion. Unlike modern African lions, these represent Panthera leo phasalis, larger and more aggressive than contemporary relatives. Your group possesses perhaps 2 minutes before arrival. Frantic cutting and scraping intensifies dramatically. A female member smashes leg bones between rocks, cracking them open, revealing fatty marrow within mind-dose calorie-rich prizes, potentially justifying this deadly gamble. Others seize available items, meat strips, smaller bones, anything edible. Then, as rapidly as arriving, your group retreats clutching meager prizes. Hyenas immediately reclaim carcasses, only to confront approaching lions. Predator faces predator, while you escape carrying barely sufficient food, justifying the risk. This defines your eating method. This represents survival. This explains why Homo habilis constantly teetered on starvation's precipice. Dental evidence reveals dietary patterns. Isotope analysis of Homo habilis teeth indicates increased meat consumption compared to earlier hominins, yet remained largely plant-dependent. Acquired meat originated primarily from scavenging, not hunting. You essentially functioned as vultures wielding stone implements. Returning to your temporary camp little beyond rock clusters, offering minimal protection, your group divides spoils. Insufficient quantities exist for everyone. Never enough remains. Strongest members receive first selection, with juveniles and weaker adults claiming remnants. Social hierarchy transcends culture. It equals survival. You've survived another feeding without becoming nourishment yourself. However, daylight hasn't concluded, nor have dangers. As afternoon transitions toward evening, your group confronts another critical choice: sleeping locations. Contemporary humans consider shelter guaranteed. Homo habilis lacked permanent protection. No caves within this environment, no structures beyond simplest stone arrangements, potentially supporting crude brush windbreaks. Ground sleeping meant vulnerability to every nocturnal predator. Arboreal sleeping offered safety from certain threats, but required locating suitable trees, increasingly scarce within savanna environments, while remaining exposed to leopards hunting arboreally with ease. Your group selects acacia tree clusters. Their spiky branches provide modest defense. Several members ascend into lower branches. Others stay grounded, clustering together, alternating wakefulness to monitor for threats. Nightfall introduces fresh predators. Hyenas cackle through darkness. Lion roars sweep across grasslands. Most frightening remain unheard sounds. Leopards' silent stalking, stealthy approaches of saber-toothed felines like Dinophelis, predators exceptionally skilled at primate hunting. Rest arrives in brief, restless intervals. Your undeveloped mind never completely relaxes, perpetually alert to approaching death sounds. This relentless stress, continuous watchfulness would exhaust contemporary humans within days. For Homo habilis, this represented ordinary existence. Sunrise appears. You've endured another night, yet several group members display illness symptoms. Their skin burns with fever, breathing becomes labored. Without modern medical knowledge or basic disease understanding, nothing can be done except hoping for natural recovery. His sickness served as another persistent early hominin companion: parasites from tainted water and flesh, infections from trivial wounds, malaria, dysentery, tuberculosis. Potential death causes proved limitless. Your immune system, though resilient against familiar dangers, lacked defenses against novel pathogens. One ailing companion won't survive today's duration. Their vacant stare and shallow respiration reveals everything. Within survival's harsh mathematics, they've become burdensome mid-consuming resources, hindering movement, potentially drawing predators. Some early hominin bands abandoned their sick. Others, demonstrating emerging social bonds later defining humanity, remained until the end. Your group chooses staying, temporarily at least. This decision reflects something uniquely human developing within these primitive ancestors: non-permission, even when survival costs emerge. Or by noon, the sick member expires. No ceremony occurs, no burial, no rituals marking their departure. Their corpse will be abandoned when the group relocates, soon joining the food chain they once participated within. Death's constant presence represented fundamental Homo habilis reality. Fossil evidence suggests few survived beyond 30-35 years, many dying much younger. Child mortality reached staggering heights. Disease, predation, accidents, starvation, dehydration, exposure, death methods proved countless. Prevention methods remained few. As your group prepares relocating toward water, that eternal lethal necessity, you confront identical danger gauntlets that eliminated your companions. No respite exists, no secure zones, no moments when vigilance can diminish. This explains why you couldn't survive one day as Homo habilis, not solely because of predators, though they provide sufficient reason, not merely due to disease or elements, but because this early hominin's entire existence constituted constant, relentless struggle against overwhelmingly opposing forces. Contemporary humans with technology, medicine, abundant nourishment, and purified water have forgotten what being prey means. We've forgotten bone-deep terror, knowing something larger and stronger hunts us. We've forgotten existing halfway down food chains, not atop them. Homo habilis remembered, they experienced it daily. The profound irony remains that this very pressure, this constant violent death threat, drove human evolution. Surviving hominins possessed marginally larger brains, slightly superior tools, somewhat more effective social structures. Each minor advantage increased survival odds sufficiently for genetic transmission to subsequent generations. Your group commences trekking toward another water source, hoping this location might prove marginally safer than previous ones. The journey crosses open savannas, through woodland patches, into competing hominin territories like Paranthropus boisei. These weren't the sole hominins sharing your environment. Depending on your exact temporal existence, you might encounter Homo rudolfensis with enlarged brains, or early Homo erectus, who would eventually replace your species entirely. Competition extended beyond predators more to your evolutionary relatives too. Relationships between different hominin species weren't consistently hostile, but scarce resources made conflict inevitable. Archaeological evidence suggests violent confrontations between distinct early human species, adding warfare to survival challenge lists. Walking onward, group members spot distant movement. Another hominin band, though not Homo habilis. They appear taller, their limbs longer, movements more efficient. Early Homo erectus, the species inheriting Earth after Homo habilis vanished. You maintain considerable distance. They possess superior tools, weapons, cognition. Within evolution's brutal calculations, they represent the future. You embody the past, yet you remain unaware. All you comprehend involves constantly struggling to survive another day, finding water without crocodilian consumption, locating food without lion or hyena death, sleeping without leopard predation, avoiding disease, injury, exposure, and starvation. This defined Homo habilis' existence. This explains why you couldn't survive within their world. Not because you're weaker, you aren't. You're larger, stronger, more intelligent, but you've lost the instincts, constant vigilance, perpetual danger, acceptance defining their existence. Fossil records narrate this story through silent eloquence. Mites bite marks on bones, predator damage, nutritional stress signs, injury evidence, disease, and premature death. This wasn't exceptional, but it represented normalcy. For every discovered Homo habilis fossil, thousands more never fossilized. They were completely consumed by predators ruling their world, becoming ancient crocodile, big cat, and hyena metabolism components, leaving no discoverable traces. Next time you sip clean water fearlessly, remember ancestor '08, the Homo habilis whose foot was severed by crocodilians 1.8 million years ago, whose fossilized remains provide mute testimony to worlds where humans weren't hunters, but hunted. Those crocodilians weren't pursuing fish, they were pursuing you. Solar radiation hangs low on horizons as your Homo habilis band approaches another water source. Not the primary lake this time, but narrow tributary feeding into it. Following yesterday's crocodilian assault, nobody wants returning to the lake itself. Perhaps here, where water flows shallower and faster, safety awaits. You're mistaken. Mistaken. What you cannot comprehend with primitive cognition is that Crocodilus anthropophagus transcends ordinary predation. It's a living fossil, the product of 85 million years evolutionary refinement. While your species existed barely 700,000 years, Crocodilians have perfected predatory abilities since dinosaur eras, hunting primates across millions of years. The riverbank appears vacant as your group approaches cautiously. No visible threats, no obvious crocodilian forms breaking surfaces. Water flows clearly over rocky bottoms, offering superior visibility compared to murky lakes. It seems safer. It isn't. What remains invisible is the crocodilian completely submerged near opposite banks. Only nostrils and eyes breach surfaces, perfectly camouflaged, nearly invisible. It observes, evaluates, calculates. His primitive brain excels remarkably at one function: mere predation. Crocodilus anthropophagus wasn't merely massive, though reaching 23 feet length and exceeding 2,000 pounds. It dwarfed modern Nile crocodilians. What generated true terror was its specialization. This wasn't generalist predation occasionally consuming hominins. This represented species specifically targeting them. How do we know? Fossil records reveal everything. When paleontologist Christopher Brochu and colleagues discovered and designated this species in 2010, they selected Anthropophagus, literally human eater. Mises, because of definitive evidence these creatures regularly preyed upon hominins. Smoking gun evidence originated from Olduvai Gorge specimens 08 and 035, Homo habilis fossils, bearing unmistakable crocodilian tooth marks. These weren't random assaults. They represented predatory patterns lasting hundreds of thousands of years. Your group disperses along riverbanks. Like previously, you alternate drinking while maintaining surveillance in all directions, yet eyes focus on water and surrounding savannas. Nobody looks skyward. The assault originates from above. A massive crocodilian launches itself from riverbank heights where it lay concealed within tall grasses. It utilizes gravity and surprise rather than aquatic ambush. An advanced hunting technique paleontologists have documented in modern crocodilians but never imagined in ancient counterparts. 700 pounds of prehistoric predator crashes into two group members simultaneously. Massive mandibles close on one's arm and shoulder. Force proves catastrophic. 3,700 pounds per square inch, easily sufficient for bone crushing. The victim's scream becomes inhuman. Primal milious prey sounds, knowing impending death approaches. However, the second targeted hominin, U2, manages scrambling away, losing only skin patches to the crocodilian's armored hide. Within your primitive mind, this registers as miraculous fortune. It isn't luck. The crocodilian was targeting the smaller individual. Crimson spreads through water as your companion vanishes beneath the surface. His resistance already diminishes as trauma overwhelms his system. Your remaining band disperses frantically. Raw cries resonate across African plains. Nobody attempts rescue against Crocodilus anthropophagus. Rescue remains impossible. What renders these prehistoric crocodilians so perfectly suited for hominin hunting? The solution involves coevolution, how predator and prey mold each other across evolutionary epochs. As early hominins became increasingly terrestrial, occupying more time near water sources rather than within them, crocodilians modified their hunting approaches. Just they evolved behaviors specifically targeting these novel bipedal primates, requiring water's edge access for hydration. The most evident adaptation involved size. Crocodilus anthropophagus expanded significantly beyond earlier crocodilian species, easily overwhelming even adult male hominins. Crushing force increased proportionally, capable of shattering denser terrestrial mammal bones. Yet size wasn't their sole advantage. These predators also cultivated more complex hunting behaviors. Contemporary crocodilians typically ambush from water, lunging at waterside prey. Fossil evidence indicates Crocodilus anthropophagus employed broader tactical ranges, including stealth stalking through shallow water toward drinking hominins, concealment within tall grasses near water sources, utilizing riverbanks as elevation for assault attacks, and cooperative group hunting driving prey toward ambush positions. Most terrifying was their apparent learning and memory capacity. Modern crocodilians recognize prey behavioral patterns, remembering successful hunting locations and returning repeatedly. Crocodilus anthropophagus likely possessed similar cognitive abilities, studying hominin group habits and anticipating movements. They weren't merely hunting individuals, they hunted behavioral patterns. For Homo habilis, this generated nearly impossible survival challenges. Daily water requirements conflicted with water sources where specialized predators concentrated hunting efforts. Unlike contemporary humans, you couldn't excavate wells, construct water collection systems, or transport water across long distances. You approached water knowing each visit might prove final. Your decimated band fled half-mile from the river, congregating within rocky outcrops' relative safety. Emotional impact from losing another member appears through hunched postures and muted vocalizations, yet grief time doesn't exist. Water problems remain unresolved, and darkness approaches. One senior female produces gesture series and soft calls. She indicates alternative directions away from both lake and river. Something within her memory, knowledge gained through survival years, suggests another option. The group follows her guidance, advancing cautiously through gathering twilight. After walking 1 mile, you discover her recollection dose a small spring seeping between rocks, creating shallow pool barely 3 feet across. It's minimal, yet sufficient presently. Most importantly, it's too confined for full-grown Crocodilus anthropophagus concealment. This knowledge safe water source locations represented critical survival information transmitted between Homo habilis groups. Those knowing crocodile-free water locations lived longer, reproduced more successfully, passing both genetics and knowledge to subsequent generations. Even these smaller water sources weren't completely secure. Juvenile crocodilians, more agile and capable of hiding in confined spaces, posed distinct threats. Other predators, leopards, lions, hyenas, understood these alternative water sources attracted vulnerable prey. No true safety existed within Homo habilis' world, only danger degrees. As your group hydrates from the spring, alternating as always, the female who guided you maintains watch from elevated rock. Her vigilance preserved her life thus far, impressive accomplishment within species, possessing barely 30-year life expectancy. Yet, vigilance extracted costs. Her body displays previous predator encounter, scars mangled hand from leopard assault, deep back scars from hyena teeth. These weren't unusual injuries. Early hominin fossil records frequently show predator attack evidence. Many survived. One Homo habilis specimen displays crocodilian tooth marks on femur bones, showing healing signs, indicating individual survival from initial attack, temporarily at least. Such survivors would carry critical first-hand predator behavior knowledge. They'd recognize hidden crocodilian warning signs, optimal water approach techniques, safest daily drinking periods. Knowledge transmitted through groups via observation and basic communication provided slim advantages against perfectly adapted predators awaiting every water source. However, Crocodilus anthropophagus adapted simultaneously. As hominins became more cautious around primary water bodies, these crocodilians expanded hunting territories, advancing up smaller streams and even onto land briefly, increasing encounter ranges. Fossil records reveal this evolutionary arms race starkly. Crocodilus anthropophagus specimens display increasing robustness across time, with later examples possessing stronger limbs for terrestrial movement and enhanced crushing force. They evolved specifically countering hominin adaptations. For paleontologists, this co-evolutionary relationship provides crucial human evolution insights. Many species-defining characteristics, niche intelligence, social cooperation, tool usage, emerged from predation pressure. We became what we are partially because of what attempted consuming us. Night descends. Your group huddles within meager rock shelter surrounding the spring. Nobody achieves deep sleep. Surrounding darkness pulses with sounds distant hyena, Fisend sove can being, lion roars, constant insect buzzing and chirping. Any sounds could precede attacks. Yet unheard sounds truly terrorize primitive minds. Crocodilians hunt silently. They don't roar announcing presence. They produce no warning sounds. They appear without notice, erupting from water or lunging from concealed positions with explosive force. This silence created unique psychological terror for early hominins. Other predators announced themselves, defined territories through vocalizations, provided presence warnings. Crocodilus anthropophagus offered no such consideration. Their attacks arrived without preamble, without warning, from unwatched directions. Contemporary humans with enlarged brains might eventually recognize crocodilian behavioral patterns, preferred hunting times, subtle presence indicators, seasonal aggression variations. Homo habilis, possessing half-sized brains, lacked complex pattern recognition capacity. Each encounter resembled the first, learning curves reset by cognitive limitations. Dawn breaks across savannas. Your group survived another night, yet ongoing challenges persist, discovering sufficient water for survival without becoming prey simultaneously. Today brings alternative approaches. Instead of approaching water sources directly, your group will scavenge water-rich plant foods, tubers, fruits, anything reducing direct water consumption needs. Strategy born from desperate necessity, adaptation to ever-present Crocodilus anthropophagus threats. While excavating tubers in hard-packed soil, using sharpened stones for ground breaking, distant movement catches attention. Massive forms advance through tall grasses, too low for large mammals, too large for small ones. Impossible. Not here, so distant from water, not within open savannas where no crocodilian should exist. Your vision doesn't deceive. Crocodilus anthropophagus, driven by hunger and adaptation, ventured far from aquatic habitats seeking prey. You're witnessing this prehistoric predator's most alarming behaviors. Also extended terrestrial hunting. Modern crocodilians can move on land, but awkwardly, slowly tiring quickly. Crocodilus anthropophagus, with developed limbs and greater stamina, could pursue prey across surprising distances. Fossil records confirm this behavior. Crocodilus anthropophagus leg bones show stronger muscle attachment points, adaptations for efficient terrestrial locomotion. They weren't merely waiting at water sources, they actively hunted across habitat ranges. For Homo habilis, this meant nowhere remained truly secure. The one predator previously avoided by maintaining water distance now found you within open savannas. Psychological impact must have proven devastating, constant, unrelenting vigilance without respite. The crocodilian hasn't detected your group yet. Its primitive brain focuses elsewhere, another primate band crossing grasslands. Not Homo habilis this time, but Paranthropus boisei, robust Australopithecines with massive jaws adapted for processing tough plant foods. From hidden positions you witness subsequent events. The crocodilian accelerates suddenly, covering ground with surprising velocity. Paranthropus groups scatter. High-pitched alarm calls piercing morning air, yet one proves insufficient, juvenile separated from adults. The assault appears brutal, efficient, primeval. Massive mandibles close around small hominin torsos. Rib-cracking sounds audible even at distance. No prolonged struggles occur, no dramatic battles, just sudden violent transitions from life to death, characterizing this ancient ecosystem. Your group utilizes distraction for rapid opposite direction movement, establishing distance between yourselves and terrestrial crocodilians. Today, another hominin species paid predator taxes. Tomorrow might be you. This wasn't exclusively Homo habilis reality. It represented reality for all hominin species within East Africa during this period. Paranthropus, early Homo, all confronted identical predator gauntlets with Crocodilus anthropophagus at apex positions. The irony suggests this predation pressure likely accelerated human evolution. Hominins possessing marginally larger brains, slightly superior problem-solving abilities, somewhat more effective communication and cooperation, maintained marginally improved survival odds. Across generations, these minor advantages accumulated, driving cognitive and social evolution, eventually leading to Homo sapiens. Realistically, we owe existence to predators hunting our ancestors. Without selective pressure, we might remain small-brained primates with limited technology and social structures. Crocodilus anthropophagus, by hunting Homo habilis so effectively, helped create conditions eventually leading to its own extinction. Yet that provides cold comfort to you, an owl's small, vulnerable Homo habilis, attempting survival within worlds where evolutionary history's most perfectly adapted predators specifically evolved hunting you. They weren't pursuing fish, they were pursuing you. Your group clusters within acacia tree shadows, hearts still pounding from crocodilian encounters. That Paranthropus child perished instead of you through pure chance, not expertise. The eldest female produces soft grunts, gesturing toward distant rocky outcrops. Her message transmits clearly without language, advance toward elevated ground. Within survival's harsh calculations, every adaptation matters. Each minor advantage might distinguish life from death. Homo habilis desperately attempted adaptation. What does a species accomplish when hunted by perfect predators? When trapped between water necessity and water's death certainty? When body, brain, and tools prove woefully insufficient against daily threats? It transforms or perishes. Homo habilis' adaptations weren't dramatic visible transformations like wing development or armor growth. They represented subtle incremental behavioral changes, social structural modifications, and cognitive capacity enhancements. Each tiny improvement offered marginally improved tomorrow-seeing chances. Beginning with obvious adaptations, tools, the primitive stone implements defining Homo habilis weren't originally weapons. They served as food processing equipment, sharp fragments for cutting scavenged carcass meat, heavy cores for bone-breaking marrow extraction, yet necessity mothers invention, even for brains barely half your size. As your group advances toward rocky outcrops, each member grips stone tools differently now, not merely as food processing implements, but as potential weapons. The senior male has modified his, using another stone creating sharper, more pointed edges. It's primitive, barely recognizable as deliberate design, yet represents weapon creation's first glimmer. Would it halt charging Crocodiles anthropophagus? Absolutely not. However, against smaller threats or final defenses, it offered something previous hominins lacked: fighting opportunities. Archaeological evidence confirms this adaptation. Later Oldowan tools display modification signs beyond food processing requirements. The cognitive advancement from meat-cutting stones to protective stones might seem obvious to modern minds, but for Homo habilis, it represented significant evolutionary progress. Rocky outcrops offer another adaptation: elevated positions. As your group ascends gentle slopes, you gain critical advantages. Visibility from elevated positions. Approaching potential threats become observable, especially crocodilians' low sinuous movements far from water. This elevated rest preference isn't uniquely hominin. Many prey species seek elevated safety. Yet for Homo habilis, it represented conscious choices, deliberate environmental selections offering superior survival odds. Groups regularly choosing safer rest positions survived longer, reproduced more successfully, transmitting cautious behaviors to subsequent generations. Night approaches, presenting eternal dilemmas: is safe sleeping within predator-filled worlds? Here another adaptation becomes apparent: social sleeping arrangements. Groups don't scatter randomly across outcrops. They position themselves deliberately, placing most vulnerable juveniles and elderly centrally, surrounded by prime reproductive age adults. Males assume perimeter positions, unconsciously creating defensive formations. This wasn't conscious military strategy. It represented instinctive behavior shaped by predation pressure. Groups arranging themselves to minimize predation survived to reproduce. Those failing became midnight meals for leopards and hyenas. Fossil records support this adaptation. Pies containing multiple Homo habilis remains often display positioning consistent with social sleeping arrangements. Predator marks on those remains predominantly appear on individuals positioned at perimeters mix, exactly expected if defensive sleeping formations were common. Physical positioning represented just one social adaptation aspect. More important was cooperative vigilance development, the alternating danger watching, while others sleep. As your group settles nightly, the eldest male remains upright, eyes scanning darkening savannas below. Within 2 hours, he'll wake another adult for replacement. This sentry duty rotation allowed something precious within predator-rich environments: sleep. Without it, exhaustion would quickly generate fatal mistakes. With it, at least some group members could rest deeply enough for effective next-day functioning. Modern hunter-gatherer groups still practice vigilance rotation forms, behavior so deeply embedded in evolutionary history that it persists despite original predator threat disappearance. It's genetic, ancestral legacy surviving because they never all slept simultaneously. Dawn breaks across savannas. Your group survived another night, yet ever-present challenges remain, discovering food and water without becoming food. Today brings another adaptation attempt, one offering Homo habilis, critical advantages against crocodilian threats, timing. Contemporary humans don't consider activity timing much. We drink when thirsty, regardless of hour. We move through darkness with artificial illumination. We've forgotten that time itself constitutes survival tools. Homo habilis hadn't forgotten. Through bitter experience, they learned predator activity followed patterns. Crocodilians, despite terrifying adaptations, remained ectothermic reptiles. Body temperature and activity levels connected to environmental conditions. During cool early mornings, Crocodilus anthropophagus grew sluggish. Metabolism slowed by night's lower temperatures. It could still attack and kill, but reactions proved fractionally slower, sustainable pursuit, distances shorter. This tiny reduced threat window provided Homo habilis critical opportunities. Your group advances quickly toward water sources, not lakes or rivers, where yesterday's attacks occurred, but different locations. Strategy appears simple yet effective. Drink quickly during day's coolest portions, then retreat to safer ground before sun warms crocodilians to full predatory potential. It functions. Water edges appear clear as your group approaches cautiously, usual scanning, usual individual drinking rotations while others guard. Today brings no explosive scales and teeth from water, just blessed thirst relief without bloodshed. This temporal adaptation tierly, adjusting activity patterns, exploiting predator weaknesses, proved subtle yet powerful. Hominin groups recognizing and exploiting these patterns maintained marginally superior survival rates, their genes and behaviors becoming more common in subsequent generations. As days warm, your group confronts another challenge: food discovery. Here too, adaptation becomes evident. Instead of individual foraging, groups spread in loose formations maintaining visual contact. When someone discovers edible tuber or fruit patches, they produce distinctive calls, bringing others to share abundance. This cooperative foraging transcended food sharing. It represented critical safety adaptation. The multiple eyes meant superior predator detection. Multiple bodies meant more potential warning signals when danger approached. Even simplest communication, sharp alarm calls when predators were spotted, provided precious escape seconds. For contemporary humans with complex language and technology, appreciating how revolutionary these simple cooperative behaviors were proves difficult. Yet for species under constant predation pressure, functioning as coordinated groups rather than isolated individuals proved transformative. Fossil records narrate this story too. Early hominin sites often display group activity, evidence multiple individuals processing food in identical locations, sharing resources, working cooperatively. This wasn't merely cultural development, it represented survival adaptation. Not all adaptations succeeded. As your group crosses savannas, you pass grim reminders of this fact, scattered bones from another Homo habilis band. Their skeletal remains tell clear stories. They attempted defending fixed territories, rather than nomadic movement. They constructed simple shelters from piled stones and branches, permanent settlement precursors. It failed catastrophically. The location predictability made them easy targets. Predators, especially territorially aware big cats, quickly learned reliable prey locations. Abundant bones suggest entire groups were killed in single attacks, likely by lions or hyenas. This represents critical human evolution lessons. Not all adaptations improve situations. Some constitute evolutionary dead ends, diminished strategies seeming beneficial, but ultimately reducing survival odds. For Homo habilis, territorial fixity attempts proved premature. Technology and social organization needed for successful permanent settlements remained hundreds of thousands of years future. Your group wisely remains nomadic, never occupying locations long enough for predator presence prediction. never creating patterns exploitable by increasingly intelligent Crocodiles anthropophagus hunting strategies. By midday, heat becomes oppressive. Your group seeks shade beneath tree clusters, conserving energy during hottest hours when both predator and prey activity naturally decreases. This thermoregulatory adaptation aligns rest periods with environmental conditions, conserving not just calories and water. Even during rest, adaptation continues. Two group members modify stone tools, carefully striking stones against others, creating sharper edges. Stone knapping's distinctive sound resonates across savanna's percussion that would eventually become human technological development's rhythmic beat. What proves significant isn't merely the tools themselves, but social transmission of tool-making knowledge. Younger members observe intently as experienced toolmakers labor, absorbing techniques through observation. This elementary teaching, learning through watching rather than verbal instruction, allowed critical survival skills to transfer between generations. Without observational learning capacity, each individual would reinvent technology from nothing. With it, knowledge accumulated, each generation building upon preceding innovations. This transcended cultural transmission. It represented survival adaptation, providing Homo Habilis critical edges over non-tool-using competitors. Afternoon brings fresh challenges as horizon clouds gather. Rainy season approaches. Mice, a period of opportunity and danger. Rain means more abundant plant foods, additional drinking water sources, potentially easier hunting as animals congregate at waterholes. Yet rain also creates mud, preserving footprints. Your group learned through harsh experience to avoid leaving trackable evidence. Predators could follow. You maintain rocky ground when possible. Cross streams breaking scent trails. Avoid creating obvious paths towards sleeping locations. This track awareness represents another cognitive adaptation, an understanding that presence evidence could be exploited by predators. Groups minimizing trackable presence survived longer than those leaving clear movement and location evidence. Gathering clouds also trigger another adaptation, weather prediction. Even with brains half your size, Homo habilis could recognize basic weather patterns and adjust behavior accordingly. Your group advances toward larger tree clusters, seeking improved shelter before rain begins. This environmental prediction capacity, recognizing patterns and acting before immediate necessity, represented cognitive leaps, offering significant survival advantages. Those anticipating environmental changes rather than merely reacting maintained superior survival odds within ecosystems, where error margins proved razor-thin. Perhaps your group's most important visible adaptation remains most subtle minus emotional bonding. As you shelter from approaching rain, group members engage in mutual grooming, reinforcing social bonds through physical contact. A mother cradles her infant protectively. Two juveniles play simple pebble games. These weren't merely pleasant social interactions, they formed foundations for humanity's greatest survival adaptation, deep, complex social structures built on emotional connections. Groups whose members were emotionally bonded defended each other more vigorously, shared resources more willingly, cooperated more effectively. Within natural selection's cold calculations, individuals caring about group mates survived at higher rates than those who didn't. Empathy wasn't luxury, it was survival trait. Rain begins, the light drizzle soon becoming downpours. Your group huddles closer, sharing body heat, protecting the most vulnerable. This simple physical cooperation for thermoregulation saved countless early hominin lives, allowing groups to survive weather conditions, killing isolated individuals. As darkness falls and rain intensifies, your group confronts another vulnerability night. Despite all these adaptations, tools, social structures, cognitive advancements, you remain desperately outmatched by specialized predators hunting you. This represents Homo habilis' cruel reality. Even their most remarkable adaptations offered only marginal survival improvement odds. They weren't evolving rapidly enough to outpace predators co-evolving alongside them, especially Crocodiles anthropophagus. For every adaptation Homo habilis developed avoiding crocodilian predation, these prehistoric monsters developed counter-adaptations. Temporal avoidance led to broader activity periods. Track awareness led to more sophisticated ambush techniques. Group vigilance led to isolated individual targeting. Fossil records narrate this grim story. Despite all adaptations, Homo habilis remained frequent prey. Tooth marks on bones don't decrease over time. If anything, they become more common as predators refined hominin hunting techniques. This explains why you couldn't survive one day as Homo habilis. Not because you lack their adaptations, but you possess more advanced versions of every survival strategy they developed, but because their inhabited world was so perfectly designed for killing them that even their most impressive adaptations barely tipped odds favorably. Those crocodilians weren't hunting fish, they were hunting you. The storm passes during nighttime. Dawn reveals transformed landscapes, standing water pools, mud-slicked grasses, bent vegetation. Your Homo habilis band emerges from meager shelter, soaked and shivering, yet alive. Another night survived against odds. Yet survival isn't victory, it's temporary reprieve. Brutal truth remains that Homo habilis lost their evolutionary battle. They vanished around 1.65 million years ago, replaced by more advanced hominins like Homo erectus. Their adaptations proved insufficient. Their tools proved insufficient. Their brains proved insufficient. Yet within their extinction lies their greatest triumph. Homo habilis didn't merely die out, they evolved. They became something superior, more capable of surviving within specialized predator worlds. Their legacy persists within you, a modern human whose existence testifies to ancient Africa's evolutionary pressure cooker. This represents the final crucial understanding of why you couldn't survive one day as Homo habilis. You don't need to. You are the culmination of 2 million years of adaptation specifically designed ensuring survival against threats they confronted. As your band navigates muddy landscapes toward higher ground, you pass something remarkable tracks within soft earth. Not hominin tracks, not ordinary predator tracks, but distinctive crocodilian tail drag marks and splayed foot impressions. Crocodiles anthropophagus, moving cross-country, distant from water. These tracks narrate stories paleontologists wouldn't reconstruct until millions of years later. Specialized hominin hunting behaviors of these prehistoric crocodilians weren't merely feeding strategies, they represented evolutionary pressures fundamentally shaping human development. Consider your brain. Human brains tripled in size throughout evolution, from Homo habilis' 600 cubic centimeters to modern Homo sapiens' 1,400 cubic centimeters. This expansion wasn't random or inevitable. It occurred because larger brains conferred specific survival advantages against specific threats. What threats require bigger brains rather than larger muscles or thicker skin? Predators hunting through pattern recognition. Predators that learn and adapt strategies. Predators like Crocodiles anthropophagus. Against most predators, physical adaptations suffice. Gazelles developed speed outrunning lions. Porcupines developed quills deterring jackals. Against predators that could learn, remember, and adjust, different adaptations were required. Inis intelligence. Hominins surviving crocodilian predation weren't necessarily strongest or fastest, they were smartest. Those with marginally superior pattern recognition, slightly improved problem-solving abilities, somewhat more sophisticated communication and cooperation. Across hundreds of thousands of years, these marginal advantages accumulated. Driving brain size increases far beyond what would have occurred without this specific predation pressure. Your group halts at small water pools, among many created by last night's rain. It's too confined for adult Crocodiles anthropophagus concealment, offering momentary respite from constant crocodilian threats. As each member drinks, you notice something subtle yet significant: their water approach methods. Constant environmental scanning, unconscious formations created maximizing omnidirectional visibility. These behaviors aren't conscious decisions, they're instinctive, embedded within brain's deepest regions through millions of years of natural selection. Those lacking these instincts died before reproduction. Those possessing them transmitted genes and behaviors to offspring. Modern humans still carry these adaptations. We still experience instinctive unease around murky water. We still feel instinctive fear responses to reptilian shapes and movements. Our brains still devote disproportionate processing power detecting predatory patterns. These aren't cultural learning, they're hardwired survival adaptations, shaped by evolutionary pressure from creatures like Crocodiles anthropophagus. The academic term is evolutionary mismatch, due to adaptations evolved for one environment continuing to influence behavior within completely different environments. Your fear of public speaking stems partially from ancient social dynamics where group rejection meant predator vulnerability. Your anxiety in dark, enclosed spaces represents adaptive responses to environments where such spaces often harbored threats. Your instinctive reptilian discomfort constitutes direct ancestral legacy from those hunted by them. As your band continues across landscapes, you encounter another hominin group, not Homo habilis this time. These hominins appear taller, their limbs longer, skulls marginally larger. Early Homo erectus, the species eventually replacing Homo habilis throughout Africa. The encounter proves tense, yet not immediately hostile. Recognition exists. These appear similar enough for kinship acknowledgement, yet different enough, registering as competition. Resources get shared reluctantly. Minimal communication establishes through gestures and vocalizations. You're witnessing the transition, ultimately dooming Homo habilis. Homo erectus wasn't merely slightly improved predecessors, he represented fundamental hominin adaptation shifts. The first ancestors truly adapting to open savanna life rather than mixed woodland-grassland environments preferred by earlier species. Their extended limbs allowed more efficient walking and running, increasing range and escape velocity. Enlarged brains enabled more sophisticated tool usage, superior predator recognition, and more complex social cooperation. Fire control, developing early in their evolution, provided unprecedented nocturnal predator protection. Most importantly for our narrative, Homo erectus became the first hominin developing effective projectile weapons, the ability to harm predators from distances. This single adaptation fundamentally altered predator-prey relationships, providing these early humans fighting chances against even the most specialized predators, including Crocodiles anthropophagus. Fossil records narrate this story through negative evidence. A gradual decreases in hominin remains, bearing crocodilian tooth marks. As Homo erectus spread throughout Africa, these specialized crocodilians lost preferred prey. Evolutionary advantages, making them such effective hominin hunters, became liabilities as prey developed effective fighting back means. By 1.2 million years ago, Crocodiles anthropophagus struggled. By 800,000 years ago, it vanished, replaced by less specialized crocodilian species, better adapted to worlds where hominins no longer represented easy prey. Within evolution's brutally elegant logic, the very predation pressure driving human brain development ultimately led to the predator's extinction that created it. Crocodiles anthropophagus shaped human evolution, only to become extinct from creatures it helped create. Your Homo habilis band continues daily survival struggles, unaware of evolutionary drama unfolding across generations. For you, only today's challenges exist, not of finding food, locating water, avoiding predators, surviving until tomorrow. Yet within your struggles, adaptations, victories and failures, you're participating in something far grander. You represent one link within selection and adaptation chains eventually leading to modern humans, your experiences, which predator attacks you survive, which adaptations help successful reproduction, which behaviors you transmit to offspring, are shaping humanity's future. This represents perhaps the most profound legacy of relationships between early hominins and specialized predators, recognizing that predation pressure wasn't merely something ancestors endured, it was something making us what we are. Consider language, perhaps humanity's most distinctive adaptation. Complex communication allowed more effective predator warnings, superior food gathering coordination, more sophisticated social cooperation. Those with enhanced communication abilities survived at higher rates, passing both genetic predispositions and learned behaviors to subsequent generations. Or consider our unique abstract thinking capacity, the ability to recognize patterns across time and space, predict outcomes based on limited information, imagine scenarios we haven't directly experienced. These cognitive capabilities weren't luxury adaptations for philosophical contemplation. They were survival mechanisms against predators employing pattern-based hunting strategies. Even our emotional lives bear this ancient predator-prey relationship's imprint. Fight-or-flight responses flooding your body with adrenaline during perceived danger moments. Vigilant circuits keeping brain portions alert even during sleep. Instinctive fear responses activating before conscious thought. These aren't human psychology flaws. They're adaptations shaped by millions of years of predation pressure. As nightfall arrives again, your band seeks shelter in small caves, rare luxuries within this landscape. Fire hasn't been tamed yet. That innovation lies hundreds of thousands of years, future with Homo erectus. Yet caves offer superior protection than open savannas, single entrances that can be monitored, walls preventing rear attacks. Within gathering darkness, one elder male begins simple rhythmic tapping with two stones, not tool-making, but something more fundamental, pattern creation. Others join, adding their rhythms, creating complex soundscapes, eventually evolving into music, storytelling, cultural transmission. This behavior serves multiple functions: reinforcing social bonds, occupying minds during vulnerable hours, potentially helping deter some predators through unfamiliar sounds, creating uncertainty, triggering caution in would-be attackers. Its most important function remains one participants cannot possibly comprehend: falling groundwork for symbolic thinking, for capacity creating and manipulating abstract reality representations. This cognitive leap, more than any other, would eventually provide humans edges over their predators. Morning arrives, another survival day within worlds designed for killing you. Your band emerges from caves immediately alert for danger, scanning surrounding landscapes for threats. In the distance, at waterholes, you observe something freezing your blood. The massive form of Crocodiles anthropophagus lies partially submerged, waiting with reptilian patience for prey approaching. Yet it's not solitary. Another crocodilian of similar dimensions lurks nearby. A third remains visible on the opposite shore. You're witnessing another adaptation within the evolutionary arm's race cooperative hunting. Just as hominins developed group protection strategies, their predators evolved group predation strategies. This wasn't coincidental, it was coevolution, each species forcing adaptational changes in others through selective pressure. Your band wisely avoids this waterhole, seeking hydration elsewhere. Yet the image of multiple crocodilians coordinating hunting efforts would carry profound implications for hominin evolution. It meant even group protection strategies proved insufficient. It meant more sophisticated cooperation, more complex communication, more effective weapons became necessary for survival. This explains why you, a modern human, couldn't survive one day as Homo Habilis. Not because you lack their adaptations, you possess more advanced versions of every survival strategy they developed, but because you've lost the constant vigilance, perpetual vulnerability awareness, acceptance of your food chain position rather than atop it. Your modern brain has been shaped by 2 million years of evolution under predation pressure, yet your modern experiences haven't reinforced those adaptations. You've never needed scanning every water source for lurking predators. You've never needed coordinating group defense against nocturnal hunters. You've never needed recognizing subtle ambush predator signs concealed in vegetation. These skills, once critical for daily survival, have atrophied in modern humans. We retain neural architecture for them, plus instinctive fear responses, heightened attention to certain environmental cues, but without constant reinforcement, they're shadows of what ancestors possessed. Crocodiles anthropophagus, and other specialized hominin predators' legacy, persists within us nonetheless. It exists in our large brains, complex social structures, capacity for cooperation and abstract thinking. It exists in our instinctive fears and unconscious water-related behaviors. It exists in evolutionary mismatch between ancient adaptations and modern environments. Next time you feel instinctive shivers at zoo crocodile sights, experience inexplicable anxiety around murky water, or startle at unexpected peripheral vision movement, remember, these aren't irrational fears. They're evolutionary echoes, whispered warnings from ancestors who survived, because they feared exactly those things. As for Homo habilis, the story ended but didn't conclude. They evolved or were replaced. Their adaptations either incorporated into subsequent species or rendered obsolete by superior solutions. Their fossil remains bearing Crocodiles anthropophagus tooth marks stand as testament to the brutal crucible that forged humanity. The crocodilians' specialized hominin hunting adaptations became evolutionary dead ends as their prey developed effective fighting back means. Modern crocodilians are their descendants, yet they've lost specific adaptations making Crocodilius anthropophagus such effective hominin hunters. They still remember within primitive reptilian brains though. Modern crocodilians still recognize human silhouettes, still respond to human movement patterns, still employ hunting strategies refined across millions of years of coevolution with our ancestors. They weren't hunting fish, they were hunting you. And within your brain's deepest, oldest regions, you remember being hunted,